Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive, brought to you by OtisWho Network. Today we're diving into a really sensitive and complex legal situation.
Yeah.
It involves Sean Diddy Combs and Jay-Z. You've probably seen the headlines.
Sure.
But we're going beyond the surface today and unpacking a recently refiled lawsuit.
Okay.
It's alleging sexual assault.
Yeah, and what makes this deep dive, I think, particularly interesting is the evolution of this case.
Okay.
So the lawsuit was originally filed back in October.
Mm-hmm.
It only targeted Combs.
Right.
But just this week, it was amended to include Jay-Z,
whose
real name is Sean Carter.
Right.
That's a pretty significant development.
It is. It definitely adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing. So for those who need a refresher, the lawsuit is being brought by an anonymous woman who is using the name Jane Doe.
Right.
She claims that back in 2000, when she was only 13 years old, she was assaulted.
Wow.
At an MTV VMA after-party.
Okay.
By both Combs and Carter. We're looking at news reports from various outlets, along with court documents, trying to piece together what's being alleged and how the accused are responding.
It's important to understand, I think, that we're dealing with two very different legal realms here.
Okay.
So the lawsuit itself is a civil case, meaning it's about seeking financial compensation for damages.
Right.
But Jay-Z, in his very strong denial, actually called for a criminal complaint to be filed. A criminal case, of course, focuses on punishment for a crime rather than financial compensation.
That's a really important distinction.
It is.
And it raises the stakes considerably.
Absolutely. Now, let's kind of delve into the specifics of the lawsuit.
Okay.
Jane Doe alleges that she was given a drink at the party that made her feel ill and went to a bedroom to lie down.
Okay.
She claims that's when Combs and Carter came into the room.
And this is where things get extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
The lawsuit states that both men assaulted her while another unnamed female celebrity was present. It also claims that Doe hit Combs to stop him from forcing her to perform a sex act and then left the party.
Wow.
It's important to note that the lawsuit doesn't use the word, but the allegations are incredibly serious.
And they've been met with forceful denials.
Yes.
Jay-Z, in particular, released a public statement calling the lawsuit a blackmail attempt orchestrated by Doe's lawyer.
Wow.
He also expressed concern for his family, especially his children having to face these accusations.
Yeah, it's a high-profile case, so the public response from both sides is crucial in shaping public opinion, I think. Yeah. There's a stark contrast. You have Jane Doe making these accusations.
Right.
And then Jay-Z vehemently denying them and calling for a criminal investigation.
It's almost like he's trying to flip the script, putting the focus on the accuser rather than on himself.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that strategy plays out in the media and potentially in court.
And we can't forget that Combs is already facing separate federal charges, a whole other legal battle.
Right. He's currently fighting charges related to sex trafficking and racketeering.
Oh, wow.
Essentially, racketeering refers to a pattern of illegal activities carried out as part of an organized enterprise. He's pleaded not guilty to these charges, and his lawyers have dismissed the current civil lawsuit as another attempt at extortion, similar to Jay-Z's response.
So we're seeing these accusations against Combs emerge on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
It definitely complicates the situation.
It absolutely does. And this case, I think, really highlights how celebrity status can affect legal proceedings.
Speaking of which, I'm curious about your take on the media coverage.
Yeah.
This case has obviously grabbed a lot of attention.
It has.
But have you noticed any biases or slants in how it's being reported?
Well, I wouldn't say bias necessarily,
Okay.
but there are definitely different angles being emphasized.
Right.
Some outlets are really honing in on the contrast between the accusations and the responses. Others are focusing more on the potential impact this could have on Combs and Jay-Z's careers and reputations.
Right. And I think that speaks to how easily public perception can be swayed.
Right.
Especially when dealing with such high-profile figures.
It's a reminder that we always have to be critical consumers of information.
Yeah.
Especially in cases like this.
Exactly. Easy to get caught up in the sensationalism, but it's crucial to remember that we're dealing with serious accusations that could have life-altering consequences for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And it's also important to remember that Jane Doe was a minor at the time of the alleged incident.
Right.
Which adds another layer of legal and ethical complexity to the situation.
Absolutely. And digging deeper into the lawsuit, there's a detail that really jumped out at me. Jane Doe claims she was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement
Oh, wow.
at the party.
That's right. And According to the lawsuit, she wasn't even given a copy of the agreement.
Wow.
If true, that could be a very significant piece of evidence, especially if it suggests an attempt to silence potential witnesses or cover up any wrongdoing.
It definitely raises some red flags. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. The lawsuit mentions that Jane Doe recognized many other celebrities at the party, but doesn't name them.
Right.
It makes you wonder why not.
That's a great question. It could be a strategic move by her legal team, maybe to avoid potential defamation claims.
Okay.
Or to keep the focus on Combs and Jay-Z.
Right.
Or it could be that she simply doesn't remember their names.
Yeah.
Which is understandable given the circumstances and the time that has passed.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah.
And speaking of missing pieces, the lawsuit specifically mentions another female celebrity referred to as Celebrity B, who was allegedly present during the assault.
Celebrity B could be a crucial witness.
Yeah.
Her testimony, if she's ever identified and willing to speak, could corroborate or contradict Jane Doe's account and potentially have a huge impact on the case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as it stands, her identity remains a mystery, adding to the already murky nature of this whole situation.
Yeah, and we have to acknowledge the power dynamics at play here.
Yeah.
We're talking about two incredibly powerful and influential men in the music industry.
Yes.
Being accused by someone who was essentially a child at the time. That kind of power imbalance can make it incredibly difficult for victims to come forward and be believed.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It raises questions about how wealth, fame, and influence can potentially shield individuals from accountability.
And how those factors might affect the legal process itself. Will Jane Doe, despite the potential challenges, choose to pursue a criminal case against Combs and/or Carter?
Yeah.
Will more witnesses, perhaps emboldened by her courage, come forward?
Yeah.
These are just some of the questions we'll be following closely as this case unfolds.
It's a complex and sensitive situation with potentially far-reaching consequences for everyone involved.
And regardless of the outcome, I think this case is a stark reminder of the importance of believing and supporting survivors of sexual assault. It takes immense courage to come forward with these kinds of allegations, and their voices deserve to be heard and taken seriously.
And it certainly does take a lot of strength to come forward with these types of accusations, especially after so many years.
Absolutely.
And thinking about the legal aspects of this whole thing.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how Jane Doe's case might impact the ongoing federal charges Combs is facing.
That's a good point. Could these new allegations influence the outcome of that trial?
Right.
It's certainly possible jurors in the federal case might be aware of the civil lawsuit.
Right.
And that could potentially impact their perception of Combs, even though they're separate legal matters.
It makes you wonder if this was a strategic move by Jane Doe's legal team, perhaps to put additional pressure on Combs or to influence public opinion.
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely a possibility worth considering. This entire situation is like a chess match with each side making calculated moves and trying to anticipate the other strategy.
And as we've discussed, there's still so many unanswered questions in this case.
There are.
Will Jane Doe choose to pursue a criminal case against Combs and/or Carter?
Right.
Will other witnesses come forward, especially Celebrity B?
Right.
And what will the long-term consequences be for everyone involved?
Those are all questions that will hopefully be answered as the legal process unfolds. But one thing is certain, this case is far from over.
Yeah.
It's likely to have significant implications not only for Combs and Jay-Z, but also for broader conversations about power accountability and the treatment of sexual assault allegations, particularly those involving high-profile figures.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground unpacking the latest developments in this incredibly complex and sensitive case.
Yeah.
It's a story that raises many questions. And as always, we encourage you to keep digging deeper, exploring the different perspectives, and forming your own informed opinions.
And before we sign off, I'd like to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
What do you think are the biggest challenges for someone in Jane Doe's position, and what factors might ultimately influence her decision to pursue criminal charges?
That's a great question to ponder as we continue to follow this developing story. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive brought to you by OtisWho Network. We'll see you next week for a brand new episode.